Booth with Bryce, Koon. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Crowded Booth. Bryce Koon alongside Ralph Leary. We're so thankful and glad that you have joined us on this fine December afternoon. Ralph, I guess I should change that because this is not a fine December afternoon. It is cold and rainy here in Columbus, Georgia. But even though the rain's been there, a lot of news has been taking place. First off, Ralph, how have you weathered the tough weather, I guess we'll say? How have you weathered the weather?
Well, if you know, I work at 3 o'clock in the morning, so it's always cold right now. So yeah, just been bundling up and then trying to stay warm. Even if we're in the South, it gets cold.
It gets cold, and I'll tell you this too. It's kind of gone down a notch over the past 3 or 4 days. We were looking at last week, it was like 60s, 70s. Right now, it's like 40 and rainy. Nonetheless, we've got a lot of college football talk. But before we get in today's show, I want to let you know where you can find us on social media. At The Crowded Booth on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Also, thecrowdedbooth.com. Make sure to hit us up there. You can follow myself over on Twitter at Bryce_Koon. You can hit Ralph. Ralph, what's the Twitter handle?
Just Ralph Leary.
At Ralph Leary as well. As we dive into today's show, we have a ton of stuff to talk to you about. We're excited for it in this brand new format. We're going back to the 30-minute shows. It's quicker, easier, and we know that you like it as well. So, Ralph, let's start it off with some of the biggest news that's happened in the Chattahoochee Valley area, outside of that area as well, and that is Bo Nix, Auburn quarterback, son of Central Phoenix City's head coach, brother of their starting quarterback. But as a lot of people know him, Auburn's starting quarterback no longer has made the decision to transfer to Oregon. He made that apparent this past weekend. In Bo Nix's first college football game, Ralph, he kind of cemented himself as etched himself in Auburn history, you might say, with a game-winning touchdown pass against the Oregon Ducks. Now he's going to be suiting up in the neon green. What are your initial thoughts on this? I mean, this is kind of something that's been weird to see, but I think we're starting to get a little bit of a gauge of how the transfer portal is, and we shouldn't be surprised by too much. Was this surprising that Oregon was the destination?
I feel like a lot of people were expecting UCF to follow Malzahn. A lot of people were expecting Cincinnati because they're competing now. They're losing their quarterback next year. They need someone who can step in and probably win instantly. And a lot of the schools were the big shot for him. But I think Oregon was kind of out there. There's obviously the connection with Kenny Dillingham, who was Auburn's he was college coordinator and his position coach when he was a freshman at Auburn. So when he was there, he kind of moved to Oregon with Dan Lanning. Obviously, that was just kind of like a good pull for him. So it's a little shocking. I think a lot of people were kind of surprised Oregon was the number one, but as we said about Spencer Rattler going to South Carolina, I'm not as surprised, but I think it's a good landing spot for him.
I think it's a good landing spot, Ralph, because of the creativity that Bo Nix likes to employ. He, like you said, he also gets to go back with Kenny Dillingham. Is it weird that we're getting ready for a matchup where Bo Nix, the jokes came out that he was finally going to be able to play in Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta. He'll be playing against Georgia. It'll be Dan Lanning versus his former team, and their quarterback is going to be a familiar face for Georgia's defense. I mean, it all comes full circle, but the transfer portal, like I said, I think Bo Nix, he announced it on Sunday evening he was making the move. I like this for him, for his development. Did you know, Ralph, and I'm looking at this stat right now, that Nix is third all-time in passing yards by an Auburn quarterback? For all the flack that he's gotten, he's been pretty productive. He's just 700 yards short of Stan White's record. So 39 passing touchdowns, that's tied for sixth in school history. And really, he probably could have padded that more if he didn't break his ankle against Mississippi State. What will Auburn fans remember Bo Nix as? I know there's been a lot of kind of a tough taste in the mouth of some of the War Eagle faithful, but in your opinion, I think there's some highlights that they can be proud of. Bo Nix gave him a chance to compete when there really wasn't a lot of consistency coaching-wise and kind of around him offensively.
As all the Auburn fans that I know I've talked to for the past few weeks about what they feel about Bo Nix, there's a lot of hatred for him. I don't see why. I mean, he gave you a lot of great wins. He beat Alabama his freshman year, beat Oregon, gave you a chance to go places, and obviously just never had that assistance that he needed around him. I felt like his offensive line was always kind of scarce. They were kind of, depleted all the time. He was always running for his life. He's a great athlete. We've seen that for years. I just think he needed that one coach to step in and just kind of give him that little nudge like, hey, this is what we can do with you. And I don't think he ever got
Mhm.
that at Auburn. Not saying Auburn can't do it. I just don't think he ever got that chance at Auburn. So hopefully at Oregon he gets that chance. I would like to see him succeed. I really do. I like Bo Nix. I think he's a great college quarterback. But like I said, he's a great college quarterback. Do I think that implies him that he'll be a great pro quarterback? I have no idea. There's a lot of quarterbacks who are like him that go to the league and don't do very well. But there's also a chance for him to go to the league and be very good. So this is a good landing spot. Like I said, I think this is where he can go out and play out west. You're not playing SEC defenses anymore now. You're playing Pac-12. It's going to be, a lot more high-scoring games, not really defensive-minded games.
That'll help him out too. And what'll also help him out is the fact, Ralph, that under Dillingham in 2019, Bo Nix won SEC Freshman of the Year. So he's had the success, the track record with Dillingham. I think that helps going forward. But like you said, Nix, his play style is a little bit of the free flowing kind, the free flowing type. That's what he likes to do. Do you see, and should Oregon fans expect kind of some theatrics? We saw that in the Auburn LSU game this past year. In your opinion, what can Auburn fans expect out of Bo Nix, or Oregon fans expect? I think they're going to get a guy that loves to win. He wants to win. And a big time competitor just from off the field. But on the field, what do you think they're going to get out in Eugene?
I mean, there's a lot of things you can compare him to a lot of quarterbacks Oregon's seen probably in the past. Obviously, a lot of fans want another Herbert, obviously, but you're not getting that out of Bo Nix. You're probably getting more of a better thrower than DeAnthony Thomas was, if I'm thinking that right. I might not be right.
DeAnthony Thomas was the running back.
The running back. Okay. The quarterback they had the year they went to the national championship in 2010 against Auburn is the same kind of style quarterback you're going to get with Bo Nix. Just Bo Nix was probably a better thrower than he was at the time. Like I said, he's a winner. He's going to give it his all no matter where he goes. I feel like, and he's going to have fun playing out there. I feel like this is going to be a fun place for him to enjoy. You don't have all that, just stress built up on you. Performing at Auburn's hard enough. Winning at Auburn's even harder. So out there in Eugene, they're not expecting a national championship. They would like to compete for one. They thought they could this year. Some big losses mid season on. So they're going to want to win games, and they have a very easy conference to win games in.
They have a very easy conference to win games in, and I've got that quarterback for you. He also wore number 10. Dennis Dixon was his name, who played in the national championship. Yeah, from 2008 to 2011, Dixon from Oakland, California. He ran a 4.5. He played with the team through 2011, so that's going way back there. But he was a talented player as well. But Ralph, Nix has
Hold on, I'm thinking of Darren Thomas.
Oh, you're thinking of Darren Thomas.
Darren Thomas, he was the one who played, I think, in the national championship. I think he wore number 1. That's all I remember. But that's why I thought Thomas. But yes,
but he has that electric play style.
Yeah,
that's the big thing. Is he's going to be a key component. I think anytime as a first year head coach, Ralph, you can bring in a guy that's got experience to help that transition. That's going to help in this situation for Oregon. No matter what your thoughts on Bo Nix are, having a guy that's also familiar with the current new OC, he's already had him one time, and obviously he had success. And arguably, Ralph, probably his best season was his freshman year for Bo Nix. So getting back to that, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see what he can do in this year, which could be a big year. I mean, you're talking about a year where he has one season, essentially. If he decides to do another one, he could. But he has one season, let's say, to really cement himself as a pro-style type of quarterback. And I say pro-style, I mean a guy that could play at the pro level, not necessarily a scheme of a pro-style. But you could do that. I mean, you could put up big numbers at Oregon. And there's been plenty of guys, Ralph, that have gotten a lot of looks that have put up big numbers. Bo Nix can do that. Imagine a Bo Nix Oregon team making the college football playoff next year. That'd be interesting.
It would be interesting.
It would be interesting.
And I think it would be shocking, to say the least.
It would be shocking indeed. Listen, Bo Nix, I think this is a win situation for him personally. I think it's a good situation for Oregon to be in as they make the transition. You match up Kenny Dillingham and you match up Bo Nix. They've already had that camaraderie, that chemistry. That's going to carry over into the next step. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some more college football topics. It's very interesting as we roll into the next topic. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back here on the Crowded Booth.
Cook's Place began serving our signature hot dogs in 1985 from a cart on Broadway. We still serve the best hot dogs and scrambled dogs in town at the corner of Moon and Miller Road and at the landings. Our friendly staff won't let you leave hungry. Come in and eat to the beat with our 50s jukebox. Cook's Place, fast service, great people, awesome food. What are you waiting for?
Back here at the Crowded Booth, I want to let you know, first off, we had our friends over at Cook's Place, but we've also got another great sponsor, Climate Control Heating and Air Columbus, your go-to nonstop shop that you need to go for all your heating and air needs. They've been serving the area since 1983. I want you to be a part of what they have going on as well. It's a ton of great people, a family-owned business, and they are a proud sponsor of the Crowded Booth. Back here on the Crowded Booth, my man, Ralph Leary. Ralph, we talked about Bo Nix. We talked about kind of the decision he made. And I was telling someone the other day, if you need a quarterback and you need a player, go to the transfer portal because there's a lot of talented guys. What has been your reaction to kind of what's happened? We've talked a lot about should they be allowed, but I don't see this calming down really because there's so many talented players that still don't have homes that a lot of guys are going to wait till the very last second before spring practice starts, which a lot of schools start in early February, which is crazy to think about, though we're just a little over a month away from spring practice. But where's your head with this? I mean, we're now about a month out from the regular season, just about. We're in the middle of bowl season. There's some games going on. Transfer portal has been absolutely nuts. There's still some very talented players. What has kind of been your reach of this whole situation? It's been interesting for me, to say the least.
Well, I think after last year, when the COVID year, everyone expected like the transfer portal to be hit hard, and I feel like it was, and I think we were used to it. But this year, it's been outrageous. I feel like everyone's leaving, and if you don't know, Ohio State signed Quinn Edwards in the beginning of fall season before his senior season started in high school. He was able to re-enroll into the class before him and go ahead and go to college in the fall, and was able to play for him. Never played. He transported when he realized that C.J. Stroud was going to play the rest of the year, or probably the rest of his career at Ohio State. So he left. Jack Miller, a 4-star quarterback at Ohio State, is now leaving. There were 2 4-star or 1 5-star and another 4-star quarterback from the same college in a transfer portal at one time. That's insane. You would never have thought of that. 3 years ago, you wouldn't think like the transfer portal. That was because you weren't going to play at all probably at that college, and you wanted to go play somewhere, or medical reasons with family, and those have been big in the past few years, or a coaching change right before you got there. Those are the only reasons I feel like were acceptable back then. But now it feels like you can just leave whenever you want to, and I find it a little crazy sometimes. Bryce, you're muted.
We talk about the talent with this. I mean, it's crazy in my opinion to see so many talented players. I mean, I want to roll down this list right here I've got in front of me, Ralph. I mean, you still have Casey Thompson, who started most of the season for Texas, but the position was kind of unsettled. He is in the portal. You talked about the young man that went to Florida. Well, now Emory Jones is in the transfer portal. Keaton Slovis is another guy that has seen success in the portal. Cameron Ward from Incarnate Word, as you like to call them. Incarnate. I like how you say that. Zach Calzada is another one. And if you want to go running back position, Zach Evans at TCU. Jameer Gibbs just announced an hour ago that he was going indeed to Alabama. So it's official with that news. But Zach Evans is another guy. And then kind of one of the top guys that is kind of gone on the radar because there's been so many quarterbacks is Marcus Banks, a former 4-star cornerback that was at Alabama and just couldn't crack the rotation due to an injury he had. And it wasn't because he wasn't good enough. It's just because sometimes when you play at a school like Alabama, and I was saying this on my Locked On Georgia Tech podcast, Ralph, sometimes when you play at big-time schools and it's due to an injury you see a guy transfer, it's not because they weren't good enough to get their job back. It's just that school recruits at such a high level that that life keeps moving on. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. And so some of these guys, it's crazy to where normally, Ralph, we've seen in past seasons, the transfer portal sits as one of these things where you kind of add some smaller, you add depth reasons. Well, now we're seeing bona fide superstars, guys that had great seasons. I mean, Calzada's the only quarterback that's managed to beat Alabama's defense this year. I mean, when you really think, when you think about it, I mean, so that's got to be some type of thing he checks off on the resume for somebody to look at. And I mean, whether or not that's another school in the SEC or beyond, it's going to be interesting to see. You look at the young man from the FCS level. I mean, a talented quarterback. The numbers he put up does not lie. He won the Heisman Trophy equivalent at the FCS level back in the spring season. You roll with Keaton Slovis, who, Ralph, other than the injury, I mean, Slovis was the reason that JT Daniels transferred out because Slovis found success. And now they have another guy, Jackson Dart, that's kind of done the same. So, it's wild for me to think about. We just talked about a couple names. There's so many different names that are going to go under the radar that I think schools, and I'm going to point to a school that I cover, and Georgia Tech added 2 Power 5 quality offensive linemen. There's going to be a lot of under the radar. You know how every single year, Ralph, we talk about who are the MLB free agent steals? I think we're going to be having that conversation of who is a steal in the portal because there were so many names. Maybe a name slipped through. Emory Jones went in the portal yesterday, and I didn't even know. I mean, that's what's crazy is the fact there's so many people going in. There's such an influx of it. So I ask you, is with time dwindling in this segment, is it interesting or is it healthy for college football to see such an influx of the transfer portal be used for the reasons it's being used? You pointed earlier to health reasons, maybe family reasons. We all get that. But this simple gratification, and I'm gonna ask you the question and then I'm gonna keep talking because I've got another point to make. I saw a great podcast. They were talking about if Tyrann Mathieu, who didn't really play his freshman year, if Tyrann Mathieu would have transferred out, we may not know the Honey Badger is who he is. So you think about the guys that maybe didn't get their opportunity first off. Maybe they go somewhere else and it doesn't work out. Maybe it's because of the fit he had at LSU. Does it strike you as weird or different to see a lot of these guys moving on so quickly and early on in their careers? Like a guy, moving, just maybe not even taking a snap like the young man that was Ohio State now at Texas.
Well, I feel like if you get when you're a high school kid and you go to that college, you're a big name quarterback. Quinn Edwards is a great example for this. You expect to play day one, and when he got to college, he realized that life hit him right in the face and said, "You're not the best quarterback here. You got beat out." I mean, I don't think he really got a chance to compete for the number one spot. CJ Stroud had it locked up after about week 2 or 3. But there's guys who like I said, fly under the radar that are underrated. No one really knows who they are. A big one to me, and this is helping out my friends from the Tennessee fans. Navy Schuler just committed from App State to Tennessee. If you don't know who Navy Schuler is, you probably wouldn't because his dad's name's Heath Schuler, a former Tennessee quarterback. So that's one name to look out for in the next few years. He's going to be when Hendon Hooker leaves and Tennessee needs their quarterback. That guy can step in. He's got a great arm. He's a great kid. And like you said, you already said his name earlier, Cameron Ward. The Heisman quarterback or the Heisman champion at the FCS level is a 4-year eligible quarterback. That's 4 years of talented football right there. There's going to be a lot of schools fighting for him. I feel like Florida's a big one that's going to try to land for him. They just got Jack Miller apparently in the transfer portal. That has not been confirmed yet, but that's apparent. Florida, probably Auburn, been looking around for him. I mean, there's a lot of schools going to be looking for this kid because he's 4 years eligibility. You don't have to go and sign some big name quarterback and expect him to play day one out of high school, or you have to find someone in your own ranks. Like Auburn right now is, down to 1 or 2 quarterbacks left in the season. So they're struggling for a quarterback in the bowl game, but then you go sign Cameron Ward, you have a guy who's going to probably compete for your starting job next year. So
yeah. Well, and 2, it begs the question too. I mean, Georgia Tech and I covered them. They're in the same situation. They've got Jeff Sims and they got a true freshman that's going to be enrolling early. And that's it. So it's going to be very interesting. And Ralph, I think that the transfer portal was created in good faith. Most of these things are. They're foreign opportunities for guys that want to get closer to home. Maybe something happens in the family, they want to go closer school home. I get that. But Ralph, there are over 1,000 names in the transfer portal right now. This is officially a free agent frenzy when we talk about it.
Yeah.
Players are taking advantage of their opportunity to find greener grass when things aren't going well in the current situation. Now, like I said, the portal is great for some student athletes. It gives them a way to escape situations that involve maybe nepotism or even maybe something unethical. It's even great if you have a coaching change in regimes and a player doesn't like the new scheme. I talked about that, Ralph. I think that it should be allowed. If here's a new regime, everyone should have the opportunity to transfer because it is something different than what they were promised or what they walked in and what they signed up for. But the portal needs some type of restrictions or guidelines to protect the players in the sport itself. Because you said it earlier, you can absolutely forget having a backup quarterback that knows the system in and out because he's been there for 3 years. Gone are the days of where a player waits for that. It's just not realistic. It's not helpful anymore. And so the portal is going to have some type of restrictions and guidelines on it. I think it's great for guys, especially like a guy like Bo Nix we talked about earlier, Ralph. He's graduated. He's done with his degree. So now he's going to make a decision based off him. That's great. That's fine. But guys that are jumping around, and we're starting to see some guys that have gone to 3-4 different schools, that's ridiculous. It's no longer about education. But then again, was it ever? We're going to come back. Ralph and I are going to wrap up today's show. We're going to talk to you a little bit about opting in or opting out. Yeah, we're covering some of the fun stuff today in today's show when we come back.
Your soap is ugh, and your body wash is a synthetic detergent. But you're not a dish. You're a man. Switch to Dr. Squatch Natural Soap for Men. For men who build things. Open pickle jars on the first try. Slay dragons. And let their daughters braid their hair. Men who like to feel good and smell. Titillating. Dr. Squatch takes you places you never thought you'd go. Naked.
Back here, section 103, you've got to check it out if you're a Georgia Tech fan. Some of the best gear that you're going to be able to find on the market. The only place that you can go and get the ATL logo that you see right there on the shirt. They're fantastic. They do such a great job. I love them. Ralph has some of the gear. Make sure to use code CRowdedBooth for 10% off your first order. Once again, that's section 103, more comfortable than the club seats. Back here on I almost said Locked On Georgia Tech there for a second. Back here on the Crowded Booth. Been doing way too many shows. We've talked about Bo Nix, the big transfer that landed out in Eugene. We talked about the portal in general, kind of the health of the sport. Ralph, let's wrap up today's show. Let's talk about opting in, opting out. This is something that was well before the portal. We started to see it. And the first big name I remember opting out was Leonard Fournette at LSU. That kind of one of the bigger names in college football. He ended up being taken the draft Super Bowl champion now with Tampa Bay. But the biggest game that's affected by it this year is the Peach Bowl, in my opinion. Kenny Pickett and the running back, Kenneth Walker III. Kenneth Walker III. Both of those guys are not playing in their respective game, which is against each other, which honestly was going to be two of the biggest reasons I tuned into the game. That was going to be a fun game to watch against Pitt and Michigan State. Now, those names aren't in there. You're, like you said earlier, you're having to force guys into action. We've talked about how we feel about the transfer portal. I get it. I understand it. Opting in, opting out, I don't love it. I may come from the old school of thought. I get guys that want to, save injury, but come on. It feels like we're getting farther and farther away from the idea of a team game and playing, rather for the name on the front of the jersey rather than the one on the back. I get it. I know it. That's an old school way of thinking. Kind of what are your thoughts on this whole opt-in, opt-out thing with bowl games?
I'm the same way, Bryce. Don't feel bad about that. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, I understand in some bowl games, in some instance, you want to compete for a national championship every year. And if you're not, you really don't want to play that bowl game. This is a Peach Bowl. This is a pretty nice, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good game. It's a New Year's Six Bowl. It's a fun one to watch every year. It's against a good team. It's gonna be a fun game to watch. And your best player, your heart and soul of the team, your Heisman candidate says, "I'm not playing. I'm getting ready for the draft." Okay, now you got your backup quarterback who's thrown 14 balls this year, or you have a guy who's thrown 4 passes this year. I mean, you're stuck right there. You don't have a guy who's been with this team all year, who's been developing all these connections with the receivers and running back and the offensive line. He's not there now. You have someone else back there, and it's not going to be comfortable for Pittsburgh. So Pitt's going to be in a different situation. With a running back, it's a little bit easier. You've got because he doesn't run the ball every play. Kenneth Walker's had games where he has a lot of carries, and some games he doesn't have a lot of carries. That's the thing about running backs. So that one's a little more understandable. I'm going to throw one just a little closer to home for me. Marcus Jones from Houston. They're all-around They're all-around athlete, punt returner, kick returner, special teams specialist, defensive back also. Is opted out of the Birmingham Bowl against Auburn to get ready for the draft. A steal in the draft to me, in my opinion, for next year. He's not playing, which, in my opinion, I really wanted to watch that game to watch him play. I've enjoyed watching for the past few years. So, and I don't like it. I understand if you're playing the playoff game, you don't opt out. But if you're not playing in it, you just opt out because it's not fun. It's not fun to play. Last year with Georgia and Cincinnati in the ball game, a lot of players opted out for Georgia. Yeah. And I feel like the same thing is going to happen with some other bowl games too.
Yeah, and listen, I get the disappointment that comes with the game. And even going back to that game with Georgia and Cincinnati in the bowl game, Ralph, I remember it was kind of a surprise that Azeez Ojulari didn't opt out in that game. He actually had the game-winning strip sack to help secure the game for Georgia. So it's weird. Like it's crazy that we've gotten to the point where players were surprised that they don't opt out. in my opinion. That's what's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But another name that kind of headed it in back in 2016, I said Leonard Fournette. It was Christian McCaffrey as well, who opted out of his game. And listen, the biggest thing we thought back in 2016, which I say back in 2016, that was 5 years ago. Absolutely crazy. After they sat out bowl games, Ralph, to culminate that season, a lot of us questioned whether that would affect where a team selected them to draft, and it didn't. Both guys went in the top 10. Fournette went number 4 overall. McCaffrey went number 8. So it's not like the NFL powers that be necessarily were affected by it. They were fine with it. But listen, opt-outs have surged since 2016. And I think that the biggest thing is, and the question it offers, and I'll end the show with this right here and ask it to you and ask it to the fans down below. Let us know what you think in the comments. Is with this, Ralph, we give the players a lot of flack. You and I had an episode a couple weeks ago that said if we're going to give coaches the right of way to take jobs that they want and we're okay with and move along, we've got to be okay with the same. Real quickly here, should that be applied to opting out as well? How many coaches like a Brian Kelly leaves Notre Dame? What if Notre Dame's player says, I don't really want to play in the game anymore because my coach left? I think there's a sense of you got to kind of keep it the same. They're going to follow what the leader does quickly in about 30 seconds or less. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm the same way. It's the same thing, Bryce. I mean, if they can leave for a better and bigger job, why should a player play for someone they don't want to play for? No, nothing against Marcus Freeman or at Notre Dame. If you want to choose another college, go ahead. But if that coach, if they bring some interim coach in there and they don't like what they coach, and they're like, well, I wanted to play for Brian Kelly, I wanted to play for Coach Kelly for my last game. He's not here anymore, so I don't want to play. I mean, I get it. I totally understand that situation. And, and I'm going to throw one more opt-out, and then I didn't even know about it until a second ago. Bryce Hall is not running the ball for Iowa State against Clemson.
Yeah.
That would hurt me to watch because I would love to watch Bryce Hall tear up Clemson in a year. But
yeah,
we won't.
It's such an interesting dilemma. We're in an age of college football where I understand where the players are coming from because the coaches are doing some things. So if we're going to place guidelines on what players can do, shouldn't there be something we place on the coaches? It seems a little bit unfair. I do get it. I understand where the players are coming from. But college football is changing. It's changing as well.
Mm-hmm.
Ralph, you know what's also changing? Us, the Crowded Booth, as well. As we get ready for 2022, we're so excited doing these shows, putting them on our YouTube channel. That's where you're going to be able to find all of us. We cannot wait. We're going to have some special live shows mixed in. But what we need you to do is we need you to hit the subscribe button. Ralph, point to where the subscribe button would be. I think it'd be right below you over on YouTube. So, yeah, hit the subscribe button right there. Set up notifications. Make sure to hit the sub button. We want you to join the Crowded Booth. Join the booth. Let's get it more and more crowded. We may have to get a Discord.
Join the booth.
It's going to be a ton of fun as well. For Ralph Leary, I'm Bryce Koon saying so long. We appreciate you. Make sure to stay tuned. We're going to continue to pump out some videos on some individual content as well as some interviews with two of the top players in the state of Georgia. We got that coming up later this week as well here on the Crowded Booth. Ralph Leary, Bryce Koon saying so long. Enjoy and have a Merry, Merry Christmas. Ralph, tell the people to have a good Christmas.
Have a very Merry Christmas.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.